And we're live. We're live, guys. Welcome to a Monday morning episode of Good Morning Liberty. It is October the 8th, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time here on the West Coast. My name is Michael Boldin, broadcasting from here at my home office and studio for the 10th Amendment Center. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Your week is off to a good start here. Hey to Will Johnson there in Good Morning Vietnam. That's a classic film. Hello, hola to EHP Training and Woodsider. Really appreciate you guys being here. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. I really had a nice time with my longtime partner, Sarah. We're celebrating our 15-year anniversary later this month, so I might take a day off. I'll let you guys know. I'll keep you in the loop on whether I get a day off on one of these episodes, depending on what we're doing for the anniversary. Hey to Richard. Now, today I want to talk about, of course, I got to make sure I hammer this in my head. If you like what we're doing, smash those like buttons. I appreciate everyone, including Richard and George, who just popped in as well. Good morning or good afternoon to you out there in Florida for leaving some comments in the live chat. Please continue to do that. I try to keep an eye on it as we go throughout the show. I do look through them afterwards. And if you're watching us later on in the archives, make sure to leave some comments. I want to know what your thoughts are about the things that we're talking about today. And of course, if you have any ideas of what you'd like us to cover in the future. I've had a number of great ideas, have already covered a few things that people have mentioned in the past. You can either leave a comment here or on whatever social channel you see, or feel free to email us, team@10thamendmentcenter.com, all spelled out, team@10thamendmentcenter.com. We read every one of them. We don't always have the time to get back to everything, but certainly we do appreciate everyone's feedback. Hi to Dan Warsaw as well. Appreciate you being with us again. So today we want to talk, or I want to talk about I always have this thing. I worked in customer service for so many years. When you represent an organization or a business, you always refer to the royal we. So while the 10th Amendment Center is definitely a we between myself and our team members like Mike Meharry, Clay Davis, people who blog for us, TJ Martinell, Dave Benner, and others, and all of our members and supporters, I mean, I'm putting together these shows, so unless you've got some ideas, so I apologize for the royal we in that one. So today I want to talk about something that came across my radar following Twitter, which oftentimes is a cesspool, but sometimes it's very interesting. I have the Twitter kind of a desktop app. You can have all these different feeds open at the same time. And I was watching people like Tom Woods and Brian McClanahan and many others, and they were tweeting about something going on in college campus. And I see this pretty often, especially for people who are engaged in the kind of the culture war debate. And to me, again, I think most universities are a cesspool of statist activity and thought. And the problem is, I think, less that it's just young people, but the fact that all of us, when we're young, at least from my experience forward, I'm in my mid-40s. When I was a kid, I was raised to be a socialist. I mean, I love my parents, but they were statists. They probably still are in some way. So they raised me to look to the state for many solutions. I mean, we were also very religious, so that was, I think, separate. But it was important to follow what the government said because the government was granted to us or some reason like that. So it was hard to actually fight back. And of course, I also lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which from what I have been told at the time, was the last major city in the country with an elected mayor who had an S next to his name, a guy named Henry Meyer. Henry Meyer was the mayor for many, many years, kept getting reelected. He was a socialist. So the mentality was very progressive, very leftist, and it was very easy to just start from that viewpoint. And over next door in Minnesota, they don't have Republican and Democrat. For those of you who might be from the Midwest, I know Dan is talking about being from Indiana. You might be aware of this, but some of the Democrat are very in Minnesota, for example. Again, I was saying no Republican and Democrat. It was Republican and DFL, Democrat Farm Labor. This is kind of an old school socialist to Marxist type of a viewpoint. It's the Labor Party. Farm labor, they organize the unions and the workers. So I definitely had kind of a really bad view of things, and universities can be really bad. But this thing that happened at Texas Christian University, TCU, which is rated one of the top 100 universities in the country by U.S. News and World Report. I don't know how reputable their ranking is, but this is a well-known university. I know them from Division I sports and things like that. Well, this guy named Steven Crowder, who some of you may follow here on YouTube, this is where we're broadcasting live right now. I have heard of him. I haven't really watched him. I've heard some interviews with him. He's a comedian. He does political commentary. He's very much from the kind of modern conservative effort, not the neocon type thing. Of the Bush era, but more of the kind of new wave of conservative commentators, at least from my impression. I haven't watched him much. Well, he went to TCU, and what he does for his shows oftentimes is he'll sit at a desk, and I'm kind of learning as I'm going here, and he's got a lot of followers on YouTube and his podcast and things like that. So he'll go, and maybe you've seen these memes on social media where someone says, I believe in such and such, change my mind. Well, this, I think, comes from Crowder, or maybe he took that meme and ran with it, but he'll take a position that's very politically charged, meant to get people pissed off, to talk, to argue, to say dumb things, to get it on camera, to be interesting to watch on a show. It's a very interesting tactic. I mean, you can look at MTV programs like Jackass, and in essence, because now they weren't necessarily taking political viewpoints, but they were basically getting people to do dumb stuff on TV because it's like a train wreck and people want to watch. And now if you can do the same type of thing with political viewpoints, you're going to get a lot of viewers if you're talented at this. So clearly, Steven Crowder is good at this. I don't know if he's got good views on the Constitution and liberty or not. Maybe sometimes, maybe not. I don't know. So he goes to TCU. He sets up shop on a public sidewalk, not on university grounds, but literally right next to it. So on the first public sidewalk, as people are walking in and out of a very busy area, and he puts up this sign, and he's talking about things, and he's getting people to talk, and he's filming for a show. And TCU puts out this tweet that I got through, I think, Brian McClanahan I saw first, and then probably Tom Woods. I saw that he sent it out in his email newsletter over the weekend. And here's the tweet from TCU. Today, Steven Crowder chose to challenge our students on a public sidewalk in front of the university. And this is the part that stuck out. While the Constitution gives him the right to express his views, the sentiments he expressed do not align with TCU's values. And that's what really stuck out to me. While this is the official, this is not like a student publication that's tweeting. This is the TCU official Twitter account. So you have to have approval, I would think. At least my partner Sarah, she worked in ad agency world running social media campaign. Woodsider already knows where I'm going with this. Absolutely. Well, Sarah ran social media campaigns for a number of major entities. She was doing a live tweeting for American Idol a few years ago. She did social media strategy for Kia Motors, for Miller Coors. I can't even remember, but a lot of major brands that people really know. And generally, when you're doing brand social media, it goes through an approval process. You don't just have some random person just tweeting out whatever they feel, whenever they want. You have to say, okay, these are the tweets that we're going to do, or these are the posts that we're going to do, and it has to have someone sign off on it. So it has a official sanction as the voice of the entity, the royal we, like I was using at the beginning of this episode. So the official university statement, the first one that came out on October 1st, 4:06 p.m., the Constitution gives him the right to express his views. Now, this type of viewpoint really drives me nuts. And it comes from, unfortunately, not just kind of the establishment left and the universities, but also comes from the right. You talk about Second Amendment rights. I really reject the idea of people saying we got to protect our Second Amendment rights. That assumes that we don't have that right without the Second Amendment. Well, we have the right to keep and bear arms, our natural right as human beings. We have the right to defend ourselves, our family, our property, whether we have a document that happens to try to limit government or not. So we have natural rights. So the Constitution, TCU takes the position that the Constitution gives them the right to express these views. Now, is this just a random error? I don't know. Yeah, and EHB Training points out Texas Christian University. So here comes, now this is the student newspaper. A little bit later, a few days later, it actually looks like. It was over the weekend. They reported on this. This is the only, there was an email from maybe the vice president of the university that talked about this a little bit in kind of press release type of viewpoints. But they kind of reiterated, they doubled down on this. They said TCU stated that Crowder was on a public sidewalk, allowing to be there, and then re-embedded the tweet talking about how the Constitution gives him the right to express his views. But this type of viewpoint spreads like a cancer very quickly. And look, they interview somebody, and who's the first person they come up with? This student, Philip Ditto, says, my thing is, the First Amendment gave the right for everyone to give their speech. So TCU students, or maybe students in general, believe that the First Amendment gives you the right. Like Obamacare gives you the right to have health care, supposedly, even though the price goes up and it's not really health care, but that's another conversation. Speech isn't free if we censor the speech we don't like. Certainly. But we're talking about someone sitting on a public sidewalk saying things that probably piss some people off, make other people laugh, make other people riled up. The point that I'm not really getting into what Steven Crowder was doing, and he was talking about rape culture. He said rape culture is a myth. So this is obviously a very charged conversation. You're going to get students who are going to go nuts about this, and of course he's trying to do this for the entertainment value of his show, or he's trying to make a point, whatever. Or maybe he's just a horrible person, or he's a great person. That's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is that the university, a major top 100 university, believes that the Constitution gives rights. And then the only quote they get from a student says the First Amendment gives us the right to have free speech. So I put together an email. Now, for those of you who are on our email list, you got this yesterday, hopefully. We've had some deliverability issues where everyone with a Yahoo account, well, first of all, it was Apple. Anyone who had an Apple, mail.com, Mac.com, me.com, and one other one that Apple owns. They blocked Mac.com, I said. They blocked all of our emails from coming through. Just automatically. If it came from us and it was going through MailChimp, this is a reputable service, all got blocked. Got that worked out. Then Yahoo came in. And did the same thing. And we've been struggling with that a little bit where I think they're testing out being able to just shut you down from even communicating from email. I'm going to look into this, hopefully cover it more if we run into more problems. But we sent out this email campaign yesterday. Please subscribe. If we end up with some difficulties delivering, we're going to set up our own service. So please subscribe at 10thamendmentcenter.com/register. And this is what I said. I quoted the tweet and I said, here's the deal. The Constitution doesn't give anyone the right to do anything. The founders wrote the document to limit government power in the hopes of stopping government from violating rights the people already have. The short version of this, and we've done videos on this, articles, all kinds of things, rights are not gifts from government. And if you look at it the other way around, and this is how I put it in the email, the TCU way, it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. And why? Because what government gives you, government can take away. So if it's a Second Amendment right, then clearly if the government defines the Second Amendment differently, which they already have for decades, then they can restrict those rights. So people who think that we do have the Second Amendment is in force today, that's because they've redefined what the Second Amendment means, and as long as it doesn't get any worse, as long as there isn't a new bump stock ban, which might be coming from the Trump administration, then the Second Amendment's still in force. But the Second Amendment has been being violated for decades in very serious ways by the federal government. So if the government can give you First Amendment rights, if the government gives you, through the First Amendment, the power to be, or the ability, the right, the freedom to be on a public sidewalk and express your views or say things that irritate people, then government can just change that definition and say, well, a government need, a compelling government interest. We don't want to arouse passions and create terrorism. So in these certain areas, well, you have to have free speech zones. And we know they do this already. So on top of this, I wrote, the founders not only saw rights as natural from our Creator, but never thought of the Constitution itself as granting rights, or even being able to protect them on its own. A common phrase was to refer to the document as a mere parchment barrier. So technically, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which are part of the Constitution, they don't grant rights. They also don't protect them. There are a set of rules for the government that need to be enforced. And words on paper, no matter how eloquent, no matter how well structured, do not defend themselves. I want to cover this in more detail. I think it will take an entire show. But part of what I included in that email campaign, first of all, was this article from Dave Benner talking about this view of parchment barriers. And I want to go through this in more detail. Maybe Wednesday or Friday show this week I'll do it, unless something really juicy comes up in the meantime. He writes, parchment barriers not enough to stop tyranny. So you can have the greatest document on the face of the earth, and maybe the Constitution isn't of itself. I would take this position. The Constitution is the greatest governing document on earth. But if people don't demand that it's followed, people don't take actions to reject violations of it, then it's still just a document. So Dave writes about this and quotes a lot of the founders' views on being a parchment barrier and what we need to do about it. And I also linked to a video that I had put together called Rights Are Not Gifts from Government. And I'll share this on our social, put the links in the show notes after the show is done here in a few minutes as well. And I talk about, again, the phrases First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, any other amendment rights imply that your rights are a grant from government. And this is the furthest thing from the truth. It's totally flipping things around. And if all students are being taught this types of thing in the universities, then we've got a major uphill educational example. So, Mihail... Oh, Pop. Well, let me take a look at a couple comments. Pop Basketball says, nice shirt. I have a flag with the same design. It is available at shop.10thamendmentcenter.com. This is from the original Ben Franklin design. Mihail says, I have a natural right to consume heroin, marijuana, cocaine. The government doesn't recognize my rights. What should I do? Well, that is certainly your decision. You do have a right to do all kinds of things, and the government does not recognize it. You bring up marijuana. Certainly, now we have 32 states and millions of people who have slowly but steadily and surely continued to defy, reject, resist, and nullify the federal prohibition on this natural right to consume and grow a plant in your own home. So that is the solution. And I talked about this. Now, we can't take the whole solution here in just a matter of minutes. We do an entire report on this every year. We have an annual report at 10thamendmentcenter.com/report that talks about the structural basis of how to deal with government overreach, to protect your rights without relying on Washington, D.C. to give you permission to exercise those rights, and how it's actually being done in practice. It's an 80-page report split about half and half. First part, strategy, principle, and philosophy. In the second half, how it's actually happening today. I do encourage everyone to read. Hi to My Cat Food. Hi, everyone checking in from the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, I think. Welcome. Welcome and good afternoon, even though it's still morning here. So the key in the video that I'm talking about, how do you exercise your rights? The base principle behind that comes from a quote from Thomas Jefferson, which is our quote for the day today. And it is, a free people claim their rights. Let's make sure I have this up here. A free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature and not as the gift of their chief magistrate. And that could be either a king or a Congress or a bureaucracy or an agency, whatever it may be. Now, the DEA doesn't want to deschedule CBD, which is used in food and health products. The FDA said it should be rescheduled. It has health benefits. This just came out, and I'm going to do an episode on this as well. The FDA specifically said it should be declassified. It's currently Schedule 1, basically the same level as heroin. CBD is from the hemp plant. It's from the flower. It's an extract that has very low to zero THC, so you don't get drunk or high or anything from it. Drunk is really the wrong term. So it has been Schedule 1, totally illegal for a long time. They just descheduled part of it to Schedule 5, a synthetic version. They said we should totally deschedule it, but that would put the U.S. government in violation of international treaties. So the U.S. government is now enforcing, or has been for decades, since the 60s actually, enforcing an international law on the use of a health product, saying that it cannot be done. And the DEA doesn't even want to recognize this. So people can use this. I mean, I can walk down the street and go to a local coffee shop or a local market and pick up products. So the manufacturers and the stores are both violating the DEA regulation and the international treaty of the United Nations at the same time. My purchase, I'm violating that as well, and gladly. We can either wait for the DEA and the United Nations to tell us that we have permission to put CBD in our cold brew coffee, or we can just do it without their permission. And that's what Thomas Jefferson is really getting to. That if you want to be free, you aren't free if you're only exercising your rights when government or some king tells you it's okay. Then you are begging for permission. As my good friend Robert Scott Bell, who's a natural health podcaster and radio show host, he does Monday through Friday on YouTube if you want an interesting later in the day show to watch. I like Robert's show. He always says, stop asking for permission where none is required. Taco Salad, good comment. The whole war on drugs is nothing more than a jobs program. Set up an impossible feat and employ people to fight against it. And the easiest place to see this happen is in a maximum security prison, where there's total prohibition on paraphernalia, not just drugs, but probably ramen noodles that are snuck in or not bought from the commissary. And they can't even lock that down. So, yes, very important point. But getting back to Thomas Jefferson, absolutely, the whole idea of being free is not about getting permission from government. That is a privilege. That is a permission slip, and that is not liberty. TCU, Texas Christian University, their view, and the student they quoted in the paper there, they're not talking about being free. They're talking about having this privilege of free speech. Well, if we allow it, if we continue to say that you're not causing too much of a problem, well, then certainly you'll be allowed to set up shop on a sidewalk and get permits and film and talk to people and challenge their views. Now, this might be kind of a nitpicky thing, but to me, I think it's extremely important, because unless you have the right foundation on liberty, you're always going to go in the wrong direction. Foundation is essential. So as long as people believe that rights are gifts from government, then they're always going to look for government for permission to do what they believe is right or wrong. So I hope you found this really interesting. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, it's 10thamendmentcenter.com/register. I also urge you to sign up to either follow Brian McClanahan or Tom Woods, both very good friends of mine at the 10th Amendment Center, very good researchers, really interesting people to listen to, whether you agree with them on everything or not. They're very intelligent people. That's where I got the idea of what's going on here at TCU, what happened last week. I'm sure it's actually far more widespread than what we're talking about if I were to dig in, like some other people, on what's going on college campuses, which I'm sure is a total mess. But I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please make sure to smash the likes. Sign up for our newsletter. Of course, our membership program is available over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members, where you can sign up to help us out for as little as $2 a month. I see a number of people here who are members, and I'm very grateful for that. If you can afford just a little bit, it really goes a long way. And we'll be back on Wednesday and Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every week, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. I hope your week is off to a great start here on Monday, and we'll see you in a couple days. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.